Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or shall I just call it a good day? So today I will be discussing one of the many lessons in the C++ Programming Fundamentals book. So I will be discussing lesson 3 because we all know lesson 1 and lesson 2 are the basics. They're just discussing what programming is, etc. For lesson 3, the title is Integrated Development Environment. So we will get to know what CodeBlocks is, how to start CodeBlocks, etc. So in lesson 3, what do we expect? Of course, we will expect what CodeBlocks IDE is. We will also be getting started with CodeBlocks. So I will share screen later on the CodeBlocks. And of course, starting our first C++ program and its keyboard shortcuts. So what is CodeBlocks IDE? CodeBlocks is a free open source cross-platform IDE that supports multiple compilers. A compiler turns the code that you have written to an executable program that a computer can run. CodeBlocks is geared toward the development of C and C++ programs, but it can also be used for other programming languages, provided that the respective SDK or software development kit for that language is installed. CodeBlocks is available for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS X operating systems, wherein one of the goals is to provide a unified look across all three OSECs. Being open source, support and development of CodeBlocks may not be as robust as retail C or C++ IDEs such as Turbo C++ or Virtual C++. However, CodeBlocks has a strong user base support and there should be no shortage of additional tutorials written by the user community. Being open source, CodeBlocks use the GNU, General Public License 3. This means that you can use CodeBlocks to create commercial applications. The GNU license kicks in when you modify the actual source code of CodeBlocks and its related plugins, and you will have to provide the source code for those modifications. So obviously, I'm spitting out the word CodeBlocks. So for our lessons, we will be using CodeBlocks 10.5 with MinGW. You can download the latest version of CodeBlocks from their website at http://codblocks.org or downloads. So now I'll be sharing my screen because we're now getting started with CodeBlocks. So let me just share my screen. Here it goes. So this is now CodeBlocks. Let me just adjust my screen here. So after you installed CodeBlocks, you can run the application by selecting the program. Where the program launches, of course, you will see the CodeBlocks IDE user interface window on your screen. So this is what the interface looks like of CodeBlocks. So the user interface has various window panels, and let us familiarize ourselves with these panels. First is the management. This management panel contains a project tab which displays all open projects. The management panel also has a symbol tab that shows symbols, variables, etc. being used. The resources tab can also be seen in this panel. So where's the management panel? This is the management panel, as you can see here. This is the management panel and the resources tab. Next is the editor panel. In this illustration above, you can find the editor panel with the tab that contains main CPP. This is the place where you type your code. If you notice, the lines in the editor panel are marked for easy reference. So it's easier to think that the editor panel is right here, because this is where the main CPP will be coded, or this is where you will code. So obviously, this is the editor panel. This is the editor panel, and this is the management panel. Third is the logs and others panel. This window is used to output search results and messages from the compiler. So obviously, as you can see, the name logs and others are situated at the bottom of the editor panel. So this is the logs and others window or panel, where you can see, of course, the search results and messages from the compiler. And lastly, we have the status bar. The status bar can be seen at the very bottom of CodeBlocks user interface. It contains the following information: absolute path of the file open on the editor, which can be seen as C++ hello or CPP. Default character encoding of the OS. This can be seen as default. The character encoding as shown in the image is Windows 1252. Row and column of the current cursor position in the editor panel. The keyboard mode for inserting text, either insert or overwrite. current state of a file. If the project has been modified, the word modified will appear in the status bar. If not, the area will be empty. Code blocks. So where is the status bar located? The status bar is, of course, here at the very bottom. I hope you can see it. So short summarization, recap. This is the management panel. As you can see, management panel, where the resources tab is also there. This is the editor panel, the logs and others panel, and lastly, the status bar. So CodeBlocks has many more advanced features situated for professional C++ developers. However, for now, it's good to familiarize ourselves with the basic interface of CodeBlocks. So there we have it. We has just got started with CodeBlocks. So we all know now where the management panel is, the editor panel is, the logs and others window, and the status bar. Now we will proceed with starting a C++ program with, of course, in CodeBlocks. So starting a C++ program, let us begin creating our first C++ program by following these simple instructions. First, let us open CodeBlocks. So CodeBlocks is now open. As you can see, the interface is there. Once the IDE has loaded, look at the menu and select File, New Project. So we will now go to File. Just watch my cursor. It says here, once the IDE has loaded, look at the menu and select File. Then we go to New, creates a new choices here, a new tab, and then go with Project. And there we have it. A new tab just appeared. So a pop-up window will be launched asking us what kind of project template we would want to use. So as basics, let us select console application. So we will select here, this is console application in the bottom of ARM project, console application. And then click on the go button. So there's no go button. Of course, we're done with the go button. We'll just take note that our examples in this book, we will use console application. This means that the code that we will create will run on the command prompt of Windows. So after choosing console application as our project template, you will be asked to select what programming language you want to use. Remember, CodeBlocks can be used to program. So of course, we will next this console application tab. So please select the language you want to use. Please make a selection. For C or C++, since our lessons are for C++, choose that in the options list and then click on the next button. So here it's default already C++, and then we will click the next button. So CodeBlocks will then ask you certain details regarding your project, such as the project title. This is the project title, project folder, folder to create project in, and then project file name below the folder to create project file. Project in. After you supply the information, CodeBlocks will show the full path of the resulting file name. For our first program, just copy the value seen on the image and then click on the bottom. So here in the book, it says here our project title will be called First Program. And then the folder to create project in, we will just use this as a default choice in the folder to create project in. And then our project file name, of course, it copies what you wrote on the project title. It just added the .cbp. And then the resulting file name, where the folder to create project in is what the resulting file name is. Then we click next. So this is the next tab that you will see after supplying the informations. After you submit your project details, you will be asked what compiler to use. For our lesson, let us use the default compiler as shown on the image and then click on the finish button. So what the book says is that what default situations or what default program that has been put in this console, in this tab, this is what we will choose. So our compiler is GNU GCC compiler, which in the book also says GNU GCC compiler because it's been programmably defaulted. So that's what we will use. And of course, we will click finish. And you will see something appears at the management panel. workspace, first program, and sources. So on the management panel of the IDE, you will see that code blocks already supplied us with something to work with. Expand the sources dictionary and we will see a file called main CPP. Is this .cpp is the C++ source code file extension name. So we will click. So how can we expand the sources directory? Is that we just double click the sources, and there we can see the main CCP and click it. And when we click it, the in the editorial tab in the or editorial management tab, I mean in the editor tab, you will see something came up. So double click on the main CCP, which we've done already, and you will see that the source code will be displayed on the editor panel. So here in the editor panel is what we call the source code. So the code blocks has conveniently provided a simple hello world. This one, simple hello world. Yeah, they have provided a simple hello world program for us. We will explain the details behind the source code in the next lesson, but for now, let us focus on how we can run the pre-written program. Look at the build toolbar or the build option of the main menu. So here, where is the build toolbar? The build toolbar is, of course, near to project and near to debug. Right of project, left of debug. This is the build. And after that, before we can run our source codes, we have to build it. The key difference between build and compile is when you choose compile, the source code is compiled as an object file. With build, the compiler compiles the source code to an object file and links all the files created to create an executable application. For our purposes, we will just use the build and run option. By selecting on the build menu, clicking on the gear, which is this one, and play icons, which is this one, of the build tab, or by pressing the F9 shortcut. We will go to that keyboard shortcuts later. Once we do that, we will see the results of the pre-written program as it launches and command prompt window. First, we're gonna click this gear, the build gear. After that, go back again to build. After that, we go to build again, toolbar, and select this play icon tab, or which we call in run. And there you have it. In this tab, you can see that the source code has been programmed, has been built, has been compiled, and has been run. So once we do that, we will see the results of the pre-written program as it launches the command prompt window. So this is the command prompt window. And there we have it. We successfully ran the pre-built code blocks Hello World program. In our next lesson, we will be deconstruct the source code and delve into more programming concepts to create more complex applications. So again, this is called as the command prompt window. After you build and run, the command prompt window will show what you've been coding in your editorial panel or your editor panel. So since we know what code blocks is, we have getting started with code blocks. We know where the management panel, the editor panel, the logs and others window status bar is. And we also know how to start a C++ program by going on with the basics. I will show you keyboard shortcuts. So I will just stop this sharing. And as you can see in my left side, you will see the keyboard shortcuts. So keyboard shortcuts can help speed up the usage of code blocks. While you may not use all the keyboard shortcuts available, it helps to know a few. Below are some useful, on my side, are some useful keyboard shortcuts. So for editing is this one. For files is of course this one. And for building or running, of course, this one again. Okay, I think that sums all of it. But let us first have a summarization. In this lesson, we have discussed the items and commands that you can see when programming using the CodeBlocks IDE, such as the management panel, the editor pane, status bar, etc. As for the main menu, most of the menu items have self-explanatory names like save, build, and run. So it is quite easy for the user to know the basic functionalities of C++, like saving, building, and running a program. So that is it for lesson 3, all about integrated development environment, all about getting started with code blocks, what is code blocks, and of course, keyboards shortcut. I hope you understand what's lesson 3 more of, and I hope you understand my discussion. Thank you so much for tuning in John Sebastian A. Quintanar's Code Blocks tutorial. Have a great day. Goodbye.